welcome everyone. I'm very excited to be here. As Todd mentioned, we exist to inform every intuition, dissolve any doubt. And what we believe is that you have all the intuitions and all of the doubts, and you have all of the answers, and we're here just to help with that. We're here to provide more data, to help you make better choices, to feel more confident to make bold moves, to uncover that next thing that could be right for you. And that's what I'm going to be showing today. Just some bits and pieces about inflation, what it means for brands, some interesting stats that stood out to us from our own research. And I'm just going to run through 20 slides in 10 minutes, so 30 seconds each. It's going to be very quick. I will leave time for questions at the end, and very happy to talk about any of this in more detail afterwards. So, US households, pretty much everyone is feeling the pinch in some way. 5.2% of people are not feeling any pressure from inflation at all. And I can exclusively reveal that this is affluent old people. Affluent old people are the only people who are not affected by what's happening right now. Not a surprise, but when you look into the data, it is a very small number and it's all of the same people, and I think we all know why, which is a bit sad. But everyone is feeling the pinch from inflation in some way. Who's feeling it the most? Gen X's. It's the people who we can hypothesize have kids in college, they have mortgage payments, they weren't on the property ladder at the right time. This is the segment that have the most pressure on what's going on right now, but we can see across different age groups, it's Gen X's who have the most pressure. If these are your target consumers, you should know that they are under the most pressure. Gen Z feeling the least pressure. Sentiment of the nation, we also ran this in the UK and across Europe. In general, people in the UK are less happy than people in the US. Things are less awesome. I'm pleased to say that happiness is much higher in the US than it is in the UK, but it's also pretty low on a 0 to 10 scale. People are feeling less optimistic, less secure about what's going on. And we put it all together, it paints quite a bleak picture for B2C businesses and consumers and consumption in general. But so we decided to go deeper on some specific bits. Where are people cutting back most? Takeouts. Takeout restaurants, delivery services, going bust, getting crushed. People are spending less of their hard-earned dollars and less available dollars on little luxuries like takeouts. Cooking more at home, staying home more, we'll see later. But super interesting that when we looked across all of the things that people are cutting back on, takeouts is one of the things that is the first thing to go out the door. We've read a lot of articles about people cutting the cord on subscription services. It's takeouts going out the door first. Reducing energy use is a much bigger problem in Europe. People trying to change their energy supplier, about 23% of people. About half of people are reducing their energy usage very actively. In the UK, there's all sorts of interesting campaigns about how you can reduce your energy usage. Across Europe, different countries have different energy strategies. France bringing back significantly more nuclear power. Same thing is happening in the US. People are really trying to reduce their energy bills because that's one of the things that are going through the roof, and that's one of the pressures along with takeouts that people are actually trying to remove. Other things cutting back, people switching brands to something cheaper and buying used rather than new. What's been really interesting is there's more drivers than just inflation of this bottom one. Particularly if we think about things like cars and automotive, it's the availability of silicon chips in those cars that was disrupted during the pandemic. That has driven a very significant increase in new car unavailability. So it's much harder to buy a new car. Inflation and availability of silicon chips is driving people into completely new spending patterns, and it's almost a generational shift in how people are consuming and exactly what's causing them to enact the behaviors that they're enacting. Big problem, one that I personally am very disappointed by, and we'll be running more and more research on this over the next few weeks and months. So people are prepared to make the sustainable choice far less often right now. Really, really sad. So it used to, when we ran this research about 6 months ago, this chart was pretty much inverted. People were prepared to pay a little bit or a lot more for sustainable brands. Right now, this is one of those choices that people aren't prepared to make. If you are pursuing a sustainability strategy, you need to almost reach price parity to help consumers remove price from a sustainable choice and leave the sustainable choice as the top choice because price defeats it almost every time. And we can see that, particularly how this has changed over time, sustainability is a concern for everyone, but the ability to act upon it has been completely diminished and gone out the door. People staying in more, fewer takeouts, eating out less, going to fewer events. quite a sad life. What's left behind? If you're not doing takeouts, you're not going out, you are staying in, you are eating out less, particularly for restaurant industries, delivery services, this is a really big change in consumption. How long will inflation and cost of living pressures last? I don't know, but I wish I did. That would be quite fun to talk about. These patterns of behavior are quite material shifts, and we just wanted to put some numbers behind it. Vacations are also really suffering. People are going on fewer vacations, cheaper vacations. That millennial group that we said earlier, less affected when it comes to cost of living and inflation pressures, they're the ones that are changing their holiday plans the most. We ran some even more detailed research on this. People are staying at home for holidays. People are putting off vacations or looking at domestic vacations when they were looking at foreign vacations. People are booking travel earlier, seeking lower total cost prices. So again, fundamental drivers of change and shifts in consumer pressures. Subscription economy. I think we've got someone from Subta here tonight. We can talk more about this in a lot of detail. People are cutting the cord on subscriptions, but there are ways you can win consumers back. Free products, discounting, little peer-to-peer offers, subscription boxes I've seen in the US and the UK, starting to add referral codes, win-back deals, but in here are all of the disaster stories you've heard about services like Peloton. Subscription services, particularly the ones that are easier to give up, where you can cancel the bank payment, you can cancel it online, they're easy to walk away from, and there's almost no cost of giving it up. Those are the ones that tend to be the first out the door. The subscription services that are giving you some relief, giving you something back, rewarding your loyalty, or making it hard to leave, those are the ones that are winning. So it's interesting to see these behaviors play out in the minds of consumers and exactly how they are making the choices. And we've run a lot more research on this, which I'm happy to talk about later on or another time if that's interesting. Keeping up appearances, people are cutting back on clothing, spending less on hair and beauty, buying less clothing on an absolute basis. And when we get into car upgrades, people are doing far less to improve their cars and rethinking their car plans. So again, it's Gen X's, that segment we saw earlier where I talked about the college fees, the cost of living, the total bills, expendable income. Those are the people that are rethinking buying new cars. We pair that with what I said earlier about the second-hand automotive market, the pressures on new cars. All of these things come together and start to paint a very different picture about what people are doing. And we exist to help us understand why that's happening, exactly where it's happening most. Here's a really interesting set of data where we start to piece these things together. So in the past, people spent quite a lot on groceries. Recently, they started to spend much more, so significantly higher weekly spend on groceries. But we see in the bottom left, people are buying cheaper stuff, and in the bottom right, they're buying less stuff. So you're getting less stuff and you're making cheaper choices, but you're spending more to get. That is a very, very significant set of combined shifts that, if you put them all together, really changes things for the consumption of groceries, both the channels, the brands, the cost of ranging, FMCGs. Brand building is now more difficult than ever. If you are a low-cost brand or a low-cost channel or a low-cost retailer, great news for you. This plays right into your hands. If you are a premium price point brand selling luxury goods in extremely well marked up stores with premium shelving and ranging positioning, very, very bad news for you, because people are having to spend more to get less, even though they're making cheaper choices. Put all these things together, very, very different picture for grocery stores right now, and also presents opportunities for people who are prepared to play into this. We think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, clothes, and shelter, and we investigated that, and it turns out food is most important. Kids actually come third. So kids rank behind third. Tough to have internet without electricity. That one doesn't really make sense to me. But energy is clearly the least of people's concerns, and prepared to cut back less on energy. We almost have to buy energy. And as we saw earlier, people are switching and trying to use energy less to reduce that bill. But food, health, kids, those are the last things out the door. We've heard a lot about people cutting the cable on Netflix. That seems to be the #1 news story. Here is the #5 news story. We should be real that food, particularly when we pair that with what we heard earlier about takeouts and about groceries, that's the last thing people will cut back on. But how they're enacting that behavior, that's what's changing so much. I love these words. I'm not going to read them all out. The internet is something I can't live without, and I have to put gas in my car in order to get to work. So there are some things that can't change at all. Gas in my car in order to earn money, in order to spend, and then I change my spending. My kids aren't going to be hot or cold. I cannot reduce my energy bill, so I'm going to cut out other things first. Understanding these things is what's important. As these things change around us, as the world around us changes, what we're here to do is add information to those questions and concerns. And it's just interesting to hear when we put it in words how that comes to life in the minds of consumers. That's what's so powerful, and that's why we do this type of research. People are spending less, putting less in the bank, putting less in savings accounts, putting less in 401ks, thinking less for retirement. There is just less money to go around. So for services providers that actually provide those services, particularly if you charge a percentage fee on money going in or coming out on an annual management charge, your world just got a whole bunch smaller. As inflation increases, your cost of borrowing increases, consumers are saving less. Big pressures in the retail financial services industry, particularly in savings and investments, and that's a story that no one's really talking about, but it is a big story in the minds of consumers. This is an area people are cutting back on far more than the media or the world are really talking about. Cash or credit, how do people make payments? Interesting change in mix, so we decided to go into a bit more detail here. How do Americans like to pay online? Crypto off a cliff, not really there anymore. We see some interesting attackers coming in. Buy now, pay later being your preferred mechanism. Combine that with credit cards in the bottom right. People are looking for more credit and support. The cost of credit has gone up, but people are using it more and more as a way to afford the things they want to buy now. That cannot last forever. So this is effectively propping up short-term consumption, but as credit cards get maxed out, as buy now, pay later reaches saturation, we are left with different payment methods for buying online, and all of that starts to, again, provide opportunities for people who can play into these things, particularly the buy now, pay later and digital payment services. Paying in store, contactless devices, cash, chip and pin, completely inverted here for Europe versus the US, a big migration and change in behavior again. And as we start to piece this all together, what do we need to take home with us from this research? There are these three fundamental things. If you can find a way to play into this idea that consumers are making choices based on that hierarchy of needs, the sacrifices they're making, to understand exactly what's going on in their minds and how and why they're making the choices, the need to protect the family is the unifying factor. So as a brand, if you can play into that need, if you can position yourself as something that protects the family, that helps defend what matters most, that plays to that hierarchy of needs, that is one of the ways you can win right now. So if you can position your product or brand as something that protects the family, that is a great way to drive engagement, interest, awareness, and be relevant when in a time where everything else is getting cut back. Understanding evolving needs is also important. So these charts and what we looked at has changed very significantly in the last 6 months. I almost wish we were running this research weekly. We could if we wanted to. Maybe that would be quite interesting to do, now I think about it. Understanding exactly in your target demographics, in your segment, the people you're trying to sell to now, the people you want to sell to next, how are they making these choices, and what are these trends that are at a national level? What does it look like for you? At a segment level, at a sub-segment level for your competitors. We try to make it easy to understand those things, but understanding how your target customers' needs are evolving and what's different now versus a month ago, and try to extrapolate what's going to matter a month from now, that's how you make that campaign a month from now actually sing and speak to those consumers. Their basis of competition, how they decide what they're spending money on, that is changing faster than ever right now. So you can look at the future, look at the now, think about your target customers and act ahead. That can be alchemy for your campaigns and growth and revenue. So the more you can understand that, the better. Last, almost give instructions to consumers about how they can use your brand and product choices to save money. Why should they not cut back on your service or product? Why should they spend more on your thing now more than ever? Why should they choose you over a competitor? How do you avoid being the high-cost, premium, luxury good retail product in Whole Foods, the caviar? We know that's the last thing out the door, except for those people I mentioned in the beginning, the affluent old people, they're still buying that caviar. But if you can be the discount product that's still worth buying, the people who are inflation agnostic, that meets all of these call to actions and hierarchy of needs, if you can find a way to instruct consumers how to think about your product, how to think about your positioning, and how, with the pressures they've got on, why you are still relevant and why you should win, these are the three ways that brands can actually win and gain and benefit from these trends. I don't love what's happening in the world around us, but there are clear messages about what's changing in the minds of consumers and what we can do about it. And that's the bit that I wanted to bring to life today.